The LOL stands for Little Old Ladies, and it is a group of friends. It's not a commercial trip. It's a group of crazy women that get together and go sailing. So September of 2021, we went. We had planned to go September of 2020, and you know the story. So we had a postponement of a year, but we made it. The whole idea of this little old lady sailing, and this photo is actually from Cuba, but that was what got it all started. And Liz is at guilt of doing all of this, but a group of women who really didn't know each other that well before the trip, we had a blast. And so later when, and živeli is a word you need to know for your Croatian trip. Živeli is cheers. So dobra večer, which is good evening and welcome, dobra došli. What I loved about Croatia, if you start just reading some of the books from the mid-90s, what they went through as a country, what they've gone through in the last 100 years as a people, then you go there and you'll meet someone that's in their mid-30s and talk to them about what they've gone through in the last 30 years. It's just so recent, what the country's been through recently, just to have that in your backpack, in your mind before you make the trip. So Hrvatska, you're going to see that everywhere. That's Croatia. So Hrvatska, when Liz called and said, okay, well, Cuba was a blast, let's go to Croatia. I said, let me get back to you. And I had to go to an atlas because I didn't even know. I knew the music and the dance, but I didn't know the geography. So you're in Italy and you go east and you get across the Adriatic and you're in Hrvatska. They don't yet use euros, so plan for their local currency, which is kuna. And we blew through a lot of kuna, because you're going to be paying cash in kuna for all this, everything. I thought we did that more than credit card. But learn that word, Hrvatska, and Hrvatski for the language. So now I'm going to zoom in because there's 1,000 islands. There's no way I could talk about the Dalmatian coast. That would overwhelm me and it would overwhelm you. So the one town that we focused on was Zadar, and it's Z-A-D-A-R. And I'm really glad that's where we started from, but you'll probably see other places to start from, and those are just fine too. There are so many islands that no matter where you start from, you're gonna be in heaven and it's gonna be fine. But our route, we started in the town of Zadar, and that's where they have there's a historic town, and it feels like a little island. There's a bridge to get there. And that's where they have the organ that the waves make the music, which is cool. So find Zadar on a map. And from where you are, right now looking at Zadar, we went north around that first island. And then we went south, and then we went south, and then we went north again. So we didn't cover a huge amount of area, which I'm grateful for. It's not there's no purpose in trying to cover a huge amount of area. It's all right there. So those of you that have been to the San Juan Islands, it's not about getting far, it's about enjoying being there. So it felt a lot like, the distances felt a lot like the San Juan Islands. If I'm in Zadar, I'm looking across, that's like looking across to Bainbridge, or, you know, so it's all right close together. So if you, oh, I didn't ask Mart if we were recording this, but if you're recording this, we went Zadar, Sari, Telesica, Piškera, Smokvica, Birbinja, and Zadar. So we did kind of a loop and back home. Not a huge amount of distances, which I'm really happy about. So first step was going to pick up our boat. I need to back up. Before the Cuba trip, And I think it was Joanne that talked about sailing with her dad. Her dad had a boat. It was all kind of like right there, and you just do sailing with your dad. That's my history as well. So I grew up on a chicken ranch. There were no boats in my family. My dad's midlife crisis created a sailing trip to Mexico in the 80s, which created me owning a boat in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s. So I'd owned a boat for 30 years. It never entered my mind that I could fly somewhere, rent a boat, and go somewhere. I thought I had to get there with my own boat. That's just, I didn't get that this was even a thing. So for my experience, this is new to me as well. The idea of going to another country, taking somebody else's boat, checking everything, and leaving. It's exciting. So Joanne, get your 104 and get your international certificate and go for it. So this is Lynn. This was the boat that we picked up in Zadar. And I put the name of the charter, but get a hold of Liz if you need that spelling again. We provisioned from one place. We didn't re-provision during the trip because there really wasn't a place to go get fresh water. There wasn't a place to buy food once we left the place where we picked up the boat. It was a Lagoon 450. So I would say big and very high, high freeboard and fun. But so we checked, just like you learn in the 104 class, you're going to go through all the systems and get all of your food packed away and sign all the papers. We did find, for those of you that have been in 101 and 103, the reefing lines weren't tied. The person that had them before us had pulled them all out of the boom and they were laying in a lump. And we caught it before we left, and I'm really glad that we did. So it's worth going through the whole pre-check as if you're buying the boat, right? But we did our checkout and we did it well. And it was time to leave Zadar. And this is Nell on the left. She might still make it into her call. Notice she's wearing a Sail Like a Girl t-shirt. Go Nell. So leaving Zadar, you guys can, I don't know if you're all muted, but just make a note of what color the buoys are. Leaving our red on the right. And we were so happy to start our trip. We were ready to go. We had enough water. We had everybody on board and not much else to do but go. And then that's Liz and I for the next 4 days, figuring out where we're going to go. And it changes day to day based on what the weather is doing and balancing what everybody wants to do. So in our bunch, we have people that really wanted to get the sails up, and we made sure that that happened every day. We had folks that really wanted to anchor the boat and fall off the back of the boat and just float. We made sure that happened every day. And there were some of us that really wanted to get on land and hike. And we made sure that happened every day. We didn't have a bunch of partiers that wanted to hit the bars and the nightclubs and go dancing. So it was a good fit for sailing, swimming, and hiking because we were heading out to the national parks. We wanted to be out in the open. Oh, let me back up one. Liz bought a router so that we were able to use Wi-Fi. We paid for it and it was, I would say, worth it, right? Put a thumbs up if Liz agrees.
I agree.
Yeah. So, we all pitched in for the router and everybody used it and it was worth doing. I don't know the magic they did, but they had a router. It was satellite, I guess. The other was that our daughter, who's 25, even though she grew up on a boat with me, she spent all of her boat time working in the boatyard, sanding and painting. So she hated boating. This was the first boating trip we've done as a family that didn't involve painting and varnishing. And she actually got to have the sails up. She had the other women on the crew who were experienced sailors and racers who kind of made it all comfortable. And it was a nice mix. Whoops, I went the wrong way. And then here's another word for your vocabulary, odlično, which is awesome. My favorite thing was to be able to just jump off the back of the boat. And we had a working dinghy, but there's really nowhere to take the dinghy to except to go hike. I think this photo, we were sent to go find salt, because the one thing that wasn't in our setup kit was table salt. So we had a mission to go get salt. But you could jump off the water, and it was absolutely perfect. For those of you that are looking for fish and coral and a lot of wildlife, no, but the water felt really soft and really clean and warm. The hiking, I think, was awesome. And I didn't expect the hiking to be as good as it was. But it's those high bluffs, rocky cliffs, and then kind of like the California coast, if you were hiking in Big Sur, where you're looking at open ocean all the way to Italy. So you have the open ocean and the high bluffs and the rocky cliffs and caves and incredible views. And I loved it. That's not where we'd anchor. You know, we went out on the west side, the Adriatic. We're on the Adriatic to go sailing. And that's where you have to go to pump out your head, because there are no porta potty dump stations and there's no head, marine sanitation devices that you can take and empty. But it was a great place to sail. And then we would come back into the inside of the islands to anchor. I want to make sure I didn't miss something. There we go. The caves were awesome. And there's even like pools that fill up with salt water and warm a little bit. So the word otak is just an island. So Dugi Otak, Berbica, and that's where you could have come in by boat to the caves if you had a skiff with a motor and you could do a long distance. But we hiked in from the west side, and it was worth it. The hiking was definitely worth planning time to do hiking. Bring shoes for hiking. And we always had to make sure that we made it to a lighthouse. That's for Claudette. Claudette likes to see lighthouses, and this is Dugi Otak still, and we're on the west side. We're on the Adriatic, looking back at the cliffs. The seas are calm right now, but there were days where we would not have come outside of the protection of the islands. So this was a calm day where there wasn't a lot of wind, but it picked up on other days. We would not have gone out on the Adriatic. We would have hung out. So the word fiaca is the art of making no effort at doing absolutely nothing. Our daughter Alexina has mastered that well. I'm glad we brought the hammock for that purpose. But again, you see it's kind of overcast and calm seas. That was pretty much what we saw the whole time. And we were there September, and the weather was great. I can't see my own photo, but I hope you guys can see it. If not, can you see the ice cream boat? Have a thumbs up if you can see the ice cream boat. I might have to move my gallery.
We can. You can see
Oh,
it,
good.
Tami.
Okay. Incredible enough, that was like one of the highlights of our trip. Sladoled became a daily ritual. Sladoled is ice cream. And we were in an anchorage, and out of the blue comes this guy with an ice box full of ice cream. And there are 9 women on our boat, and you would have thought that just money was falling from the sky because we were so excited. They deliver ice cream to the boat. The terrain behind you is pretty much what we saw the whole time. It's kind of rocky. It might grow olives and and not a lot more. You're not going to see a forest. You're going to see more of the scrub and the olive trees. It's a rocky terrain, but beautiful. And olive trees everywhere. So what I fantasized for the full year that we had to wait for this trip to happen was olive oil, red wine, homemade cheese, homemade salami or some type of homemade dried meat, homemade bread, and homemade whiskey. And that's exactly what we found. So there was an interview on a podcast, a local podcast, and they asked a woman, like, what did you do when you were growing up? And she basically said, we harvest the olives and we harvest the grapes, then we make cheese, then we make salami. That's what they do. Everyone does. So anyone's house you go to, there'll be a water bottle. They'll reuse all the plastic bottles to put the olive oil, and everybody makes their own olive oil, and it's all different based on what was in the ground where their olives were growing. And they said, well, what did you do with the olive oil? And she said, everything. And she just, that sigh of everything. It tastes so good. It's on everything. It's for everything. And so you're going to love the olive oil when you get there, and try to bring some home if you can. Same with the wine. Everybody made their own wine. We bought cheese from a man on the side of the road that he had made. And if it hadn't been getting dark, I would have just stayed there and went and milked his goats with him. I was so happy to know this sheep farmer, and he had goat cheese and sheep cheese and cow cheese, and it's called sir. So the food was great. So now I'm moving a little bit further west. So we're not out on the Adriatic, but we're on the east side of those chain of islands, protected from the Adriatic by a line of islands. And this one is Pescara, and it is September, and the docks would fill up, but then I think it was getting to the end of the season. And Nell took this picture of, we had a full moon, we had the dock to ourselves. And so when you get something like that, then you say, Vala Vampuno. Thank you so much. So much gratefulness for having this kind of space. On the other, like we're on this side, on the other side is Pescara. And we met a bee farmer. And I got to say, the cruising's great and the sailing's great, but the people were what made this trip so wonderful. So this young man, I say young, okay, I don't know how old he is, but this young man raises bees and his wife makes lotion from it. And he was selling the honey and the lotion where we were, but he didn't live there. He lived across the way. And he said, do you want to meet my bees? Well, Mary raises bees and we raise bees. So we said, of course. He said, well, I bring a boat. So he brings his boat. He gives us a ride to his island. He introduces us to his bees, his olives, his cabin where his family of 4 lives, his chickens, his galley. This is it. He lives in a little tiny cabin. The most delightful day we've had really was meeting and making friends on the island, having time to do that. So Priatelli is your friend. Jacob was his name. And then we saw a chapel or a little church, and we asked about that. He goes, oh, I have the key. So he took us to see this chapel. And I don't, Mary probably knows what year this was built. We're looking at it completely restored in the 90s after the Serbian-Croatian wars. It was restored. But before that, it was a sheep pen. And when he was young, and he's young now, so when he was just recently young, he played football in the chapel. It was a sheep pen for kidding. So much has happened in the last 20 years that I encourage you to take the time to talk to the people in their 30s, because they have they have experienced so much in the last 15 years alone. It's just amazing. So Jacob was our buddy, and he spent half a day with us, showing us his island. He was quite proud. It was wonderful. And this whole thing started because Liz and Mary put together this little old lady sailing group. And so you'll be able to get a hold of Liz, and thank you, Mary. I'm glad you're on this call too. But this whole opportunity that I would have never thought of, the idea of going to another country, renting a boat and going traveling without bringing my own boat. Got to thank them for starting this whole thing. The other benefit of just getting a bunch of women together, and even though they're called little old ladies, our daughter was there, and she's under 50, but we had this breadth of expertise. So Nell would focus on the anchoring, Liz would focus on the navigation, I would deal with the helm, Mary and Claudette dealing with the galley. And so everybody took their part, and it worked out really well. So much so that after this trip, our daughter said, well, that was fun. Can we go again? So now I'm trying to learn Greek. And next year we'll try to go to Greece, and we're going to try to rent a boat similar to the boat we have, a trimaran, because it seems to just open up other opportunities. For those taking the 101, 103, 104, then you package that together to get your International Certificate of Proficiency, I think is the name of it. And that is worth doing because that allows you to go to rent a boat in Greece or Croatia. So pitanje, which is questions. Do you have questions? And I don't know, how do we want to do this, Margaret? Does everybody just jump on and ask questions?